Big time stop by that defense. Lions show 4 across the front.
I pledge my Sundays to the Honolulu Blue, to the silver stripes and the soul of the blue crew. From the ashes of 0 and then 16 we rose with the chip on our shoulder that everyone knows. I stand with the faithful, the loud and the loyal, on Michigan soil where the battle lines coil. I pledge allegiance to the shield and the mane, through the lake effect snow and the November rain. One nation under God, moving the chains with the fire of the city coursing through our veins. Hey! Invisible spirit, upon them will crack. We got the whole league's targets on our back. Watch the war room flicker, watch the vision take hold, turning late round flyers into Detroit gold. He's the master of the board, the dealer of the deck, putting every expert opinion in check. Put every expert opinion in check. He doesn't follow trends, he creates the hook. Quiet in the room, let Brad cook. To the trenches we swear, where the dirty work's done, where the game isn't played, it's physically won. I promise to roar till my vocal cords fray, to believe in the homes and the Brad chosen way. We don't want the flash, we don't want the glitz, just the hunters who thrive in the heart of the grit. Liberty from the cellar, and justice for the years of pain. No more same old lions, just the kings of the northern reign. I pledge my allegiance, my heart and my roar, to the team that we love and the team we adore. With kneecaps for breakfast and victory in sight, we're the Detroit Lions and we're winning tonight.
All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome into the Rise and Grind Morning Show. Appreciate you guys sticking around. And yes, I'm late. But man, it's been a rough couple of days. If you guys remember the last time I was on, I started to have some real wild pain about halfway through the show. What was that? Was that Wednesday? I think it was Wednesday. I can't even remember what day it was. I've been on so many damn meds. It's crazy. But I went and grabbed the ice pack while we were live. And then as soon as I got off the show, I went down to the urgent care up the road just to make sure that, do I need to go to the hospital? Like, what's going on? Because I have, surgically repaired neck and lumbar, and it was wild pain. I've never had pain like this in the middle of my back. So after a whole bunch of injections, Toradol and steroids, that kind of got me up today. Yesterday, I was pretty much down. All these damn muscle relaxers, pain meds. I mean, they gave me the full gamut. That's the only reason why I'm here right now. So I feel like crap, but man, there's so much to talk about. I couldn't let this go till next week. We have to wrap up the minicamp. There are so many good stories popping out of minicamp. So I had to come in. Hopefully we have a good crowd today, or decent crowd. They're one of the people that matter anyway, the people that show up. And let's kind of talk about it. So I have so many different things that I wrote down, partly because, well, I was seeing double, so it's one of those days where I just started writing like crazy and trying to get all these topics at least on paper so we could talk about it today. So anyway, good morning. Welcome into the Rise and Grind Morning Show. Let's kick it off with a NFC North topic today, and it's kind of I talked about this the other day, and it's the Chicago Bears, and the Chicago Bears potentially moving to Indiana. And how their board, really advanced the conversation of potentially making this happen. And And so I came across an article, and Brian Urlacher had something to say about it. I know I've had my things to say about it, and I still believe in it. A big shout out to you, Adam G., the $25 in the bucket today to Rock Down Cancer Foundation. Appreciate that. As always, man, appreciate you guys' support, and the real ones that know, they know. They're the only ones that matter. So anyway, we started having this conversation probably a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, that, man, I would feel like everything changed if the NFC North now had no Chicago Bears. I wouldn't ever want to see the Lions really have to play anywhere else but in Chicago against Chicago. But then another talking point kind of came through when the conversation happened, possibly a dome for Chicago. So that kind of changes your feelings a little bit, and I'm going to explain why here in just a moment. Let me try to get the chat up on my phone because I can't see it on my computer right now, and I don't know why. Probably because I'm seeing double. One sec. All right, there we go. Now I got some chat in front of me. And good morning, Eric, man. Have fun today out at your event. Did you ever do the TV show this week? Eric was supposed to do a TV show this week. I hope that all went well if you're able to. They're supposed to go launch some well, I probably shouldn't say anything because I don't want to give away the goodies. I'll let Eric discuss that later next week or whatever. But anyway, Bears dome change. It changes Chicago's identity. But what else would it do, right? What else would that do for the competition side of things? And if you know where I'm going with this, it's the competition side of things. The Lions, this kind of like you're giving us the NFC North. Or does this make the Bears better? That's where we're going with this. So Brian Urlacher doesn't want the Bears moving or playing in a dome. He doesn't want them moving out of Chicago, period, and nor should he. The Detroit connection with this whole thing is a permanent Bears move into a dome would change one of the NFC North's traditional late season road environments or possible late season road environments. The NFC North was kind of flip-flopping a little bit. The Lions would travel late in the season, or, we would, have them at home late in the season. I don't remember last year's schedule now. I think we did play on the road last year. We're doing it again this year, so I think we're kind of getting screwed having to play away. But either way, Brian Urlacher publicly pushed back against the Bears leaving Soldier Field or moving into a dome stadium. His argument is that Chicago's cold, windy, late season environment. Let me get my notes back in front of me. And those conditions create a real advantage against teams that do play in a dome. Or does it? You guys have heard it. Jared Goff can't play in wind. He can't play in rain. He can't play in the cold. Bullshit. He's done it, and he's won plenty of games in some of the worst conditions out there. He's done just fine. So I'm not worried about that. You can talk smack about Jared Goff all you want. He's just going to go out on the field and prove you wrong. But again, I think he's making a very valid point here. And I think it's a relevant point because for Detroit, the Lions already play indoors. We've been playing in a dome forever. So historically, we've had to adjust to the outdoor environment, the conditions in Chicago or Green Bay or any other team that we play late in the season, which just seems like it's more NFC North now. So if the Bears eventually moved into a dome, this matchup would become more of a controlled environment, and it could reduce the environmental edge that Chicago would then hold and they have leaned on for decades. But the question still remains. If the Bears board, which has now advanced this whole, Indiana Stadium idea or option, if they get a final location and they do this and they do a dome, does it help Chicago? Or would it help the rest of the NFL? At least initially, right? I think some of those players that have played in domes throughout their college career, well, they're going to love, playing in a dome. But then that, age-old debate, grass, non-grass, grass, fake grass, like what's better for the player? So I have two questions for you this morning. Who benefits? Well, really, it's one question, maybe two statements. Who benefits more from a dome? Would a dome make Chicago more dangerous offensively? Does this help Caleb Williams out, removing the traditional weather, advantage late in the season? Or does it benefit the Lions more? Detroit is already built for speed. We have, been playing through controlled indoor environments for a long time. And a future dome in Chicago, I think, would just make that matchup more similar to the environment that the Lions already prefer. So look at our well, if you look at the traditional record that the Lions have held for years, we have struggled more outdoors. I think any dome team does. But if you look at the last 5-6 seasons, that's kind of changed. We've been able to handle just about anything you can throw at us. Sometimes you're going up against a better team when you're injured, and there's nothing you could do about it. It just happens to be an outdoors game. So I think this gives Drew Petzing in that offense more of an opportunity to win, these away games outdoors and without all these weather limitations. I mean, come on. And especially with what Jahmyr Gibbs is already saying about Drew Petzing, I think that is the biggest statement of the week, and we're going to get into that here in just a moment. So that's my question. Who benefits more from Chicago potentially moving to Indiana with a dome versus staying in Chicago at Soldier Field? I'll give you my thoughts, and that is this. You put up a dome for Chicago, and I think that the Lions are going to run roughshod all over you for a couple of seasons. I do think that Chicago will eventually become a better football team, not having to deal with the elements, because then you have taken away. I mean, both teams have to play in it, right? Some people are built better for cold and outdoor environments, and some just aren't. I think that it changes the way that you create your roster, and if you know where I'm kind of going with that, look, a GM is not going to go out and just get guys that can't play in the cold weather. When you're building a team in a cold environment or potential cold environment, especially a late season push, you're expecting to have guys on your team that can go out there with no clothes on and survive, right? You see guys out there without their shirts on during warmups. They're going out there to get acclimated to the weather, and that's because they love it. They're used to it. They're cold plunging all the time. They can handle it. And that is something that I would say for the Lions that they need to do more of. That is, get your ass outside late in the season. Don't practice inside. Practice outside all week as much as you can for any outdoor environment. But everybody should be cold plunging it that entire week, multiple times a day, to get your body acclimated. It takes more than just a day. It takes more than just a couple of hours to get ready for a cold environment. So if they're not going to change, I think the Lions need to change a little bit of what they're doing or add more to what they're doing prior to some of these games, because I don't know the full gamut of what they're doing behind the scenes unless you're there. So those are things that I would love to learn. What is Dan Campbell having these guys do differently ahead of a game like this? I've been very vocal about it in the past. You should never be traveling, across, half the country or across, from east to west coast in a matter of, 24 to 36 hours and turn around and jumping on a field to play a game. I feel like that is irresponsible, and they should be out there at least a few days ahead. Get rid of the jet lag. It is a real thing. I know these guys travel and do things all the time, but I think that there's some things that, the NFL or the Lions themselves could do a little bit differently. They would give them more of an advantage or at least a level playing field. But in this case, if you put a dome on Chicago, I think it's curtains, man. I think it's a wrap for Chicago for at least a little bit until they get their roster, reconstructed a little bit to handle more of the indoor environment. But anyway, let's move forward to Dan Campbell. And by the way, I have, 20 some odd points to go over this morning, and I'm not even going to hit them all. That's how much stuff is going on in Detroit, wrapping up, the final mini camp this week on, I believe that was Wednesday was the final day. We still have 50 minutes or so of video to walk through. I'm not going to go through it all this morning with the Lions coaches, but we're going to go through some of it. But right now, before I get into Dan Campbell, I'd like to get into what you guys think about the Dome. Rather be Fishing Fred says a Dome stadium, especially for northern teams, also allows opportunities for much more financial opportunities. I didn't even think of that. That's a good statement. Let's see. Edge is not the answer. Says, sadly, how the thing with moving out of Chicago will just end up being a way to get taxpayers to build the Bears a new stadium. Well, it's kind of how it always works. Edge, we pay for it, man. We foot the bill. Those of us that work and contribute taxes, we pay for it. Fortunately for me, I don't pay taxes inside the city of Detroit, so I'm not paying, or I didn't pay for the Lions environment or the Lions stadium, excuse me. But I have paid for the Lions Stadium through all of these years of being a Lions season ticket holder and going to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of games throughout my time in Detroit. I've contributed my part, just like a lot of you have. But good statements. Adam Gakowski says, man, bring that dome, please. J Mommy says Chicago was charged about $350 million a year. That is extortion. That's crazy, isn't it? How much money that the city pays to have that dome. And I went through this video, had to be about a year and a half ago, and it explained really well. I'm gonna have to find it and see if I can play it for y'all. I just make sure that monetization isn't on, because it really explains who's paying for the domes and how these billionaires, they walk in and they press the city or the state to give them all these tax benefits, and then the citizens turn around and pay for it all. But then they reap all the benefits, right? They don't pay for it, but somehow they get all these tax benefits on top of it. So they're getting paid to put in a stadium before they even host one concert, one game, before they do anything. They're making millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. And I don't think that's right or fair. Now, if I was, on the other side of that equation, I would probably love it. But at the same time, for instance, Elon Musk, you have $1 trillion, bro. And that's 31,700 years it would take you to spend $1 trillion if you spent just $1 a day. And some of these guys with billions and tens of billions, they're never going to spend that money. I know a lot of it's paper money, paper tiger money, but it's still real money. And I don't know. I don't want to get lost in the sauce, but these guys are making shitloads of money without even doing anything. And I don't think that's right or fair to the citizens, man. We pay way too much taxes as it is. K-Biz says, oh my, Indiana Bears talk. They should have made more upgrades to the spaceship known as Soldier Field. Yeah, I mean, look, dude, that Soldier Field is so iconic. And I know I forgot to get everything up for the trips. I'm probably going to just whittle it down to a couple of trips, or at least just really focus on one trip. I think the Bears game, even though it's outdoors, might be the best one to go to this year, just in case there is no more Soldier Field here soon. Trace, good morning, says, let's see, where was it? Oh, you're talking about what the Lions did. Yeah, Lions put a lot of money into doing their own upgrades. They paid for a lot of it. That didn't come out of the citizens, so spot on with that. How long is it going to take to build their stadium? Probably 4 years. You're spot on there, Clinton. Probably 4 years. So they'll be in Chicago for a little while. It's an interesting conversation, man, to see what's going to happen in Chicago and how that affects the rest of the NFC North. And Eric did respond. He said, it might be next week now. Typical TV people not calling me back in time. Well, hopefully they get that done. Hopefully you get that done, man. I think that's going to be fun. All right, let's move on to Dan Campbell, because there's been a lot of conversation this spring, right? It's not quite summer. We got, what is the date today? A couple more days of spring, technically. But Dan Campbell, changing the workload this year, he really eliminated rookie minicamp and joint practices, but Campbell still refuses to really make training camp soft, right? That's what's coming up in July. Now, they've gone through OTAs, they've gone through the mandatory minicamp, and they've done a little bit different, I guess, kind of a camp this year. The live tackling, you can't have it right now. They're not in pads, but the injury concerns, the preseason snaps, the workload distribution, the player readiness. I mean, these are all conversations on the forefront for the Lions and how they're going to interact with their players when training camp does come around. Fans have definitely spit a lot of fire at Ford, the Ford family, and Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes for practicing too hard, or, putting these guys in pads too much, doing live tackling drills, whatever it is. And let me remind you, there's only 14 padded practices that are allowed during the regular season, which is less than one per week. And I think at least 10 of them have to happen before November 1st. So before the trade deadline. That's not a lot of padded practice, right? And you don't have to have a padded practice during the week. And maybe the Lions won't have live tackling drills anymore before a game. Matter of fact, I would say do all the tackling stuff before the season starts. I think that would be a wise move. And then do a little bit of tackling during your bye week. Or if you have an extended period of time off, call it 10 days before your next game, you should definitely have a live tackling drill before and in between that time as well. You want to keep your bodies ready, right? You want to recover, but you also want to be ready. It's not like they're going out there and hitting each other, 200 times in a day. It's practice. It's a couple hours long. And if they're hitting each other, 20 times, 30 times, 40 times in a practice, I would say that that's a lot, right? And that's, I mean by a lot like they shouldn't be. I mean like that would be a lot if they're actually getting that amount of work in. So I don't really believe it's a concern. I think that it's part of, it's part of football. Look, when I played, we had, 2-a-days, right? And I know the NFL used to have 2-a-days, and 2-a-days sucked. But we were out there at 8 or 9 a.m. The sun's creeping up at 10. You have the high nooner, right? It's just blazing hot, and you're practicing for 8 hours in a day. That was our 2-a-days in high school. They didn't give a shit how we felt. They didn't care how much it hurt us, and that's probably why my body is as broken down as it is, because I played, 5 sports, and I played them all, to the nth degree. But we don't have that kind of stuff anymore. Kids growing up today are kind of wussies, in my opinion, because they even my own kids, I've told them, we ain't going to practice like that. We're going to practice, a little bit differently, and I think it helped them out through their careers through high school and college. And by the way, surprised that my kids flew up for the week, so super excited to see them tonight. But anyway, I still feel that you have to have live tackling. You have to keep your body, in regular shape. Otherwise, you have what's called going soft. And no, I'm not talking about sildenafil or the blue pill or blue chew. No, you're going soft between, camp or games or whatever, because if you're not doing enough tackling, your body's not hardened. And when you go out there, look what happens. You go out there for those first drills, bang, there goes a player. Why? Because they didn't hit for the last 3, 4, 5 weeks. And they go out there and they get hit, they get smacked in the mouth, and now their body's broken. So you have to hit the weights. You have to put some bulk on. You have to have more muscle on your body. And I've spoken with plenty of athletes, about how they try to condition themselves. And more of them are realizing that they have to get harder. They have to create a harder shell. Your bones have to be harder. And the only way to do that is contact, right? I mean, obviously eating right, lifting right, drink your damn milk, get your vitamin D, your calcium. But the most important thing is you have to do the real work. And Dan Campbell's not going to let that die. He's just not. He said that Detroit will continue pushing players in training camp while attempting to manage the workloads intelligently, right? And I think that's a smart way to approach it. Dan Campbell's not going to change the Lions' identity because of a few whiny people, because of injury fears, and he knows that the balance has to be smarter. Campbell is standing by the physical practice philosophy. He's not going to let that go. It's helped define Detroit's culture and who they are. Why do you think that teams fear playing the Detroit Lions? And you've heard it time and time and time again. That is a team that we expect to come into our stadium and smack us in the mouth. They're going to play snap through the whistle, right? They're going to push it and push it and push it as far as they have to go. They're going to hit you. And that's who the Lions are, and that's what we're known for. This was the black and blue division back in the day. And look, that's Dan Campbell. I mean, he was playing in Detroit, not necessarily around that time, but he understands that time. Football, when he played, was a lot different. And he has to manage, his expectations as well and understand that this isn't the same NFL. He has to manage these guys a little bit better. So Campbell said the team will continue to push players because they must be prepared for a 17-game season. Dan, I wish you wouldn't have said 17. I wish you would have said at least 20 games. But hey, it is what it is. He also stressed that the program must be smart enough to avoid breaking players down before week 1. And I think that is the smart move. I think that's the intelligent move, that they're stepping this up and they're passing the workload around. They're getting everybody involved a little bit more. You don't just have the number ones doing all the work. You're giving every level, every tier of player an opportunity to get in there and get some work in. And it's reducing the load or the workload adjustments, if you will, with the rest of the team. The Lions eliminated, like I said, rookie minicamp. They passed on joint practices, and they may give starters more preseason work instead. And that is a rumor at this point. It is something that I've heard from one of my sources that we will, in fact, see the number ones in preseason this season. You've heard it here first. I'm glad that I got to share that with you guys today, and I hope it happens. It's just a rumor, but you know how Dan is. He could change, like his underwear. Hopefully he changes his underwear. But anyway, that means the organization is changing how it's going to distribute the physical, preparation, even if it's not abandoning the physical practices altogether. So I guess my questions to you this morning with this conversation would be, should the Lions really reduce live tackling during training camp? Because in training camp, that's when pads come on. Or Would the preseason snaps be safer than physical joint practices like we've done in the past? And would it be more beneficial for the Lions to have first team reps in preseason work this season? I'm going with the latter. I think that we need the preseason work. I think it's critical. I know not every team that has won a Super Bowl or gone deep into the playoffs plays in the preseason, but I think when you have new coaches, a second-year defensive coordinator, and a first-year offensive coordinator, I think it's even more critical to get out there and play against teams that are going to give you something different than what you're seeing in practice. I think that, that's why the Lions typically stumble out of the block every year through, week 3 at least. It's kind of hit or miss. We've gotten lucky a few years. We've started, 3-0, 2-1, 1-1, and I would rather see it get back to 3-0. So I think that Dan has to put it to work this year and put these guys into the preseason. Next up, Sorsby to Detroit in the supplemental draft. Do you guys know what the supplemental draft is? How many of you heard of the supplemental draft in the NFL? How many of you knew it was a real thing? I think it's hilarious. Let me get some talking points because I didn't prepare any talking points for it really. But what is the supplemental draft in the NFL, and how often are players drafted? That's the main question this morning, and we're going to jump right into that when we get back. I'm going to give my voice a minor break. We'll see you back here in just a few moments.
Pressured by Hutchinson, he goes down again.
Okay, latest rumors about the Detroit Lions and Brendan Sorsby. The biggest question is, are the Lions even interested in Sorsby? And really the big news out of Detroit is they have not ruled out making a run at the former Texas Tech quarterback. So what is the real cost of drafting Sorsby? Really the question is not whether Sorsby has the talent. I think it's whether Detroit should surrender a 2027 draft pick for a quarterback it does not intend to really need this year, and maybe not even next year. I would think that if you're going to go through and draft a quarterback, this is just my personal feelings on this, I think that it should be done from a more natural standpoint, that this is a player that you've done the work on. You're forced to really get all the information quickly and ahead of this supplemental draft, and I don't know that that's really smart. Why didn't Sorsby just enter the draft? I don't think that he would have been drafted after the second round. It definitely wouldn't have been. He could have broke the first round this year because it was so depleted of quarterbacks, and he probably should have. He probably should have. but he didn't. And so I think that, when you look at Goff's contract, Teddy Bridgewater, Luke Altmaier, and no, there is no quarterback controversy going on in Detroit. Whoever's writing that bull, it's all BS. Future draft capital, the off-field evaluation and what he's done in Sorsby and how much trouble he got into. Look, they went through some of this stuff with JMO, not to this degree. JMO got in trouble for betting, on sports in the NFL, but not on his own team. And so let's discuss what happened with Brendan Sorsby first. Sorsby, played for Indiana and Cincinnati before transferring to Texas Tech, and he was declared permanently ineligible by the NCAA after an investigation had revealed extensive sports gambling violations. To the scale, he placed over 9,000 bets, 9,000, totaling more than $90,000 on college and pro sports over a 4-year window, which that's not a big deal as long as it's not on your own damn team, right? No, I got someone calling me. Hold on. Can't talk right now. Sorry. But anyway, I think most critically, Sorsby admitted that he placed at least 40 wagers on the Indiana Hoosiers while he was a freshman quarterback on the roster. Now, is that a huge deal? Maybe. He has inside information. We'll just call it that. He knows a lot about, the scheme and the teams they're going up against. And that's exactly why they don't want you doing that, because you have inside information. It's just like insider trading. It's the same damn thing. So he completed a 35-day inpatient rehab program for a gambling addiction. And then a Texas judge initially granted him a legal injunction to let him play for Texas Tech in 26. However, after severe national backlash and pressure from the Big 12 Conference, Texas Tech really told Sorsby he would not be allowed to play or not allowed to suit up. Now, I don't know how or why the judge allowing him to do this and to play was then that opportunity removed by Texas Tech. I don't know that they legally could have done that. I really haven't spent 2 minutes even looking into it. But he ended up dropping his lawsuit against the NCAA and applied for the NFL supplemental draft instead. So he's being forced into the situation. And I think whenever you're forced into a situation like this, maybe a team will take, a legitimate risk on you. There's a lot of teams, or at least a few teams right now that would benefit from a good quarterback. He definitely has first-round talent. He threw for 2,800 yards and 27 touchdowns in 2025 before this scandal broke. And because the Lions did not have, really an obvious heir apparent, maybe Luke Altmaier's that, to Jared Goff, but there could be a reason why you'd want to bring in a guy like Sorsby for competition. He has a hell of an arm, but, the real question is he the type of player that you want on your team? I'm never going to not give a person a second chance or the benefit of the doubt. I think that's just, who I am. I think everyone deserves a second chance. JMO got his second, third, and fourth chance, but I just think that's where we are, with sports. These guys are going to get their second chance. The question is it going to happen during the supplemental draft? I don't know. I really don't know. So what is the supplemental draft? And I think that Raw B was kind of hitting it right on the head there at the very beginning. But the supplemental draft, it's the secondary summer draft that's designed for college players who lost their eligibility. So after the January deadline to declare for the standard April NFL draft, this typically happens to players due to a sudden academic issue, disciplinarian issue, legal matters, or unexpected transfer portal rules violations. So it's usually not a good thing that you're in the supplemental draft, right? Players that are drafted very rarely through this mechanism. And since its inception in 1977, only 46 players have ever been selected in the supplemental draft. So how many years is that between 77 and 2025? That would be 23, call it 48 years. So not even one player per year on average has been selected in the supplemental draft. So, in fact, no player has been chosen in the supplemental draft since 2019, if that tells you anything. So, is he going to get selected? I don't know. How does it work? And this is where Robbie was hitting it on the head. It's a bid system, and it's a blind bid system. It's like a silent auction. Each team must submit a blind bid specifying the player that they want, the specific round that they want, and what they're willing to spend. Draft capital, what they're willing to spend. Now, the cost, if a team wins the player, they immediately add them to their roster, but they must forfeit their corresponding draft pick in the following year's draft. So, for example, if the Lions wanted to bring in Brendan Sorsby and they were willing to put a second-round grade on him, we would lose our second-round pick in 2027. Now, I don't think that the Lions would be that silly to do something like that. I would say that they'd probably be willing to put a fourth-round pick on the guy, and they just might. We'll never even know. I don't even think they release, because it's blind, I don't think that they do release which teams put in an offer for these players. So unless a team was willing to tell you that they did, I don't think that there's really a way to find out. So we have no idea how many years and to what players, the Lions have ever bid on, or any teams, unless they've won the player. So there's no guarantee. Even if the player, let me wind back. No guarantee event. So if no players apply and get approved by the league office, then the NFL simply cancels the event for that summer. So there's no guarantee that it's even going to happen, but Sorsby's in the mix, and he wants to enter this draft. It's an unlikely opportunity that he's going to get drafted. The question is, which teams are willing to take the risk? The Lions don't have a need. This is a nil story for me. Even though we're talking about it, I'm talking about it because I'm dousing water on the idea that Brendan Sorsby is going to be a Detroit Lion here this summer. It's just not going to happen. The last time in 2019, the Cardinals drafted Jalen Thompson in 2019 using a fifth-round bid. They lost their 2020 fifth-round pick. There is tiebreaker rules for all of this, and so who's Jalen Thompson, right? How did that work out? How has his career been, for Jalen Thompson? He's been in 95 regular season games. And if you look at his most recent season in 2025 for Arizona, I mean, he's been a consistent ball player, man. He's been in just about half the games. He's been in about half the games since 2019, roughly. Let me look at his splits real quick. He's played for Arizona for his entire career. That's 7 seasons now. No, he's been in more than half the games. He's played in almost every game. It's actually 99 games. He's only missed 2, 4, 6, 17, 18 games in 7 seasons. So 1 season's worth of games he's missed throughout his career. So sometimes it works out, right? Sometimes it works out. And Jalen Thompson's been a pretty decent player. So yes, there's a benefit. It can be a low risk if you're getting the guy in the 5th round. Of course, it's low risk. But is it worth it? That's the biggest question. Is it worth it? So my question on this: do you want Brendan Sorsby to be selected by the Detroit Lions? And if you do, let me know in the comments now, or the chat now, the comments later. What are you willing to give up for that player? What is a realistic asking price, or what is a realistic draft compensation that you think the Lions should give up for him? And I would say 4th, 5th round pick, sure. But beyond that, nah, I'm good. Brad Holmes always finds his way of replacing his draft picks. Some of the biggest news this week: Lions going deep into the UFL. Now, I know Eric's got to love this because he loves the UFL. And I do too. I just didn't spend any time watching any games this year. But four of some of the better players that have graced the UFL over the last few seasons, and some of them have real NFL experience. I've broken down every player. We're going to talk about all these wide receivers that the Lions brought in and why. What are the real talking points surrounding these guys? And we'll start with that now. As far as Brendan Sorsby, Edge says, I don't know where the rest of the conversation's heading, but potentially getting someone with character issues, I would agree. That's a big concern. And the Lions are not about that. They're willing to take a risk on one, maybe two players. And I don't really think we have any character issues on the team now. Obviously, J-Mo's, far beyond wherever he was. He's now a big-time leader. At least I believe he's kind of grown into a big-time leader, and he's really doing the right thing. So, you can go through some crap, right, in your rookie, your sophomore season in the NFL, and as long as you can get it cleaned up, I think that you'll be okay. But bringing in a known character issue, I think that's a whole different set of circumstances. Robbie says he really likes Altmaier. I think Altmaier's good, but I just don't see where that this is going to be a. I just don't see where this is going to be a big issue for us. Oh my God, what is it? Who's this Ace Boogie dude saying that the Lions have decided to trade defensive end Aiden Hutchinson? What is this all about? That would be crazy, right? But clearly false information. Thanks for handling that this morning. Okay. Let's start with these receivers, man. We started off with two, and then we added a third, and now I couldn't get my fingers to work. A third, now we got a fourth. Throwing up football gang signs over here. Let's start with Lawrence Keys, the third, who was just added to the Detroit Lions roster. The Lions have added not one, not two, not three, but four UFL receivers, making that four in 1 week. When is the last time we've added this many receivers in a week? Never. They released Kyrie Duplessis, who they picked up, after Kendrick Law went down with his injury. But Lawrence Keys, in my opinion, doing some brief history on him yesterday, he might be more than just a camp body. And simply because the Lions need someone to take control of this return game. And he has some bona fide experience, not just as a returner, but as a receiver. The Lions are creating separate competitions, but I think this is a very valuable point right now that they're creating separate competitions for receiver depth and for return duties. They've kind of split the baby, if you will. We've even seen or heard that Amon-Ra is back there receiving, punts and kicks. There's been a few players back there that, we don't expect to see in the season, but Amon-Ra, J-Mo, Gibbs, all three of them over the past few seasons have been back there returning kicks and punts. It's part of what they do every single season to stay ready just in case they are the, third, fourth, fifth guy that's needed due to injury. I don't believe any one of those guys will be back there, throughout the season unless it's absolutely warranted. So I think that's a big non-issue. Don't worry about that right now. I don't think that the Lions are going to put them in harm's way. Maybe that's something to be said about the return game. It's a vicious, it's a vicious few seconds, especially punts. But now with the change to the kickoff rules, I know that a lot of people think it's better. You're still returning a ball, man, and you still got all these guys gunning after you, and it can be very, very violent, a vicious tackle, and especially in the punt game, there's nothing worse than trying to return a punt. I know. Been there, done that, got my clock cleaned, and that's when I had my first concussion. I was on the what we call the pink pansy return team when I was, who came up with that, right? Come on, coach. 9th grade, I'm on the pink pansy return team, and yes, that was the number one return team. First game of the season, and this ball probably went 20 yards, went straight up. And I'm just there looking at it, not even looking downfield, and I got smoked, absolutely smoked. And I saw all sorts of stuff, lights, and not even 2 plays later, I'm back in the game at wideout. I couldn't see anything, but I know that I cleared a couple people for a touchdown blocking downfield. I do know that. That's all I remember from that game. I remember those 2 plays, or 3 plays. That was it. The return, got smoked, held on to the ball. I didn't lose the ball. I know you're thinking that. I didn't lose the ball. Matter of fact, I don't think I even dropped it going to the sideline. But then 2 plays later, I was in for a couple more plays, and clearly they could tell I didn't know what the hell was going on. I think they finally sat me out. But anyway, yeah, back then they didn't care. Concussions, walk it off, man. Get in the game. We are tough. But anyway, so the keys to this, they're creating separate competitions. They're trying to figure out who are the guys that we can bring in that can give us some real return action, and who has the clearer path to the roster through special teams versus just wide receiver play, on the offense. The final roster questions, I believe, for Detroit is going to carry that question of the dedicated return specialist, or is it going to require a larger offensive role to make that final roster spot? Let me kind of clarify that a little bit. The final roster question for me is whether Detroit carries a dedicated return specialist versus a player that can do both and has a larger offensive role, even though the fifth or the sixth wide receiver typically doesn't in this offense. But they're going to need to be able to have a larger offensive role. That's the question. Will they carry a specialist? Will they carry the sixth or even a seventh wide receiver? I don't think seven's possible. Six is usually not even possible some years, especially with how deep the defensive line and edge room is. I think that's going to squeeze out a receiver potentially, and they'll probably carry five, which means they're bringing in my opinion, they're bringing in all these players because that fifth spot has to be a player that can do both. That's my opinion. I don't think that they're going to bring in a bona fide return specialist. They need this guy to be able to play. And I think it makes a lot of sense. But if you look at the types of players they're bringing in, let's break down Lawrence Keys III, Tay Martin, Lucky Jackson, and Tariq Black based on what they've done in the NFL, what they've done in the UFL, and where do they stack up in size. Lawrence Keys, he is your typical slot guy, return specialist. 5'9", 175 pounds. He's clocked a verified 4.41 40-yard dash at his Tulane Pro Day. He has exceptional change of direction agility. I've only watched a few plays. I haven't broken down any film on him, so I really can't go deep into that. NFL experience, 0 regular season games. He did sign as a UDFA with Buffalo in 2024. He did log 1 preseason catch for 13 yards before a season-ending leg injury. Again, that was 2024. His college peak, he was kind of tucked, on the Notre Dame's depth chart. He was pretty far down the list early on, and then he exploded after transferring to Tulane. His 2023 season, he had 599 yards, 7 TDs on a staggering 18.2 yards per catch. That's pretty amazing. 18.2. That's like J-Mo territory. Matter of fact, that might be exactly J-Mo's territory from last year. UFL impact, he played for the Houston Gamblers. He was an all-purpose catalyst, stacking up 349 receiving yards alongside 652 combined kick and punt return yards to finish second in the UFL in total yardage. That means something, right? I mean, he was the catalyst of their return game. That means something. 652 combined kick and punt return yards. That's not a small amount. Like I said, he did finish second. I didn't notice, any breakaway TDs or anything. So if I missed it, I apologize, but I didn't see any when I was doing my scrape there to try to find all the information. So that's Lawrence Keys, 5'9", 175. Could definitely play both ways. 599 yards in the offense, 7 touchdowns in 2023. At Tulane, and right around 1,000 yards combined in the UFL. So that's not minor. Lucky Jackson, he's very physical. He's 6 foot, 191 pounds. He's the fastest player of the 4. He runs a blistering 4.36, and I say blistering because that's Jahmyr Gibbs' speed. That's Isaiah Pacheco's speed. His NFL experience is fairly limited. He did appear in 3 regular season games for the Minnesota Vikings in 2023. We talked about him the other day. He logged 32 snaps on special teams and 3 on offense. He generated major buzz in the 2025 preseason, but he was a final roster cut candidate. In college, he peaked as a major producer at Western Kentucky. In 2019, his senior season, he featured 94 catches, 8th in the NCAA that season, 1,133 yards and 4 TDs in a 17-catch MVP performance in the First Responder Bowl. So we know if there's a player that they brought in that can contribute on offense, it's more than likely Lucky. He would be the guy that could be that 5th or 6th receiver that can contribute on the offense. The question is his return game going to be able to match what he can do on the field, and utilizing that 4.36 speed, is that more beneficial? And he's a little bit bigger, which means he's a bigger target. And I kind of think, the Lions like the smaller guy that, if you kind of look at what Raymond was and who he, how he played, they like the smaller, slipperier guys in punt and kickoff returns because for that exact reason. I mean, you look at Tom Kennedy, same thing, a little bit smaller, a little bit more slipperier. He kind of gets lost in the trash, if you will, coming out of the back, coming out, with the kick returns or the punt returns. You got a big wall. You can't really see the guys. So that helps. But he's a little bit bigger. Then we have Tay Martin. He's even bigger yet. He's more of that boundary weapon. 6'3", 185. He does lack the high-end, burst and speed. He runs a 4.58. Not that that's a big knock because Amon-Ra St. Brown runs a 4.56, or at least that's what he was clocked at. But he wins with the arm length, the massive catch radius. And so this is someone that you're looking at, as a true X receiver, someone that can give you some looks in the red zone. The most experienced of the group in the NFL, at least, with 7 active games split across the 49ers, the Titans, and the Commanders. He has caught 5 passes, 95 yards, including a 49-yard touchdown from Will Levis in 2024. He peaked in college where he was playing for Mike Leach at Washington State before finishing at Oklahoma State in his 2021 season where he was quite elite. He had 80 receptions, 1,046 yards, and 10 TDs. I mean, that's not easy to do, right? Now in the UFL, he suited up as the alpha receiver for the Columbus Aviators. He acted as a true high-volume chain mover, finished 3rd in the UFL that season with 42 receptions, 7th in the league with 483 yards. What year that was, for some reason, I didn't write down. I don't think it was last year. Maybe it was last year. I could probably look that up, but I won't. You guys are going to have to double-check me on that one. Tariq Black, the last of the 4. This is another X receiver. So when you look at the 2, styles of players that the Lions have brought in, that's someone else calling me this morning. When you look at the 2 styles of players that the Lions have brought in, you have Tariq Black. He's more of that X receiver. Tay Martin, he's more of that X receiver. Lucky Jackson's kind of in the middle, being 6 foot. And then Lawrence Keys is definitely more of that special team size at 5'9". But Tay Martin, he's very physical. He's long. He's lean. He's that boundary weapon. He's 6'3". He's a little bit smaller at 185. So he definitely lacks, he lacks, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. Tariq Black is very physical, prototypical NFL X receiver, built like a linebacker at 6'3", 215 pounds. He recorded a 4.53, so he's not super fast, but he's a big guy. 40-yard dash, but he pairs it with an elite 40-inch vertical jump to dominate those 50-50 balls. His NFL experience, he did bounce through 5 practice squads. He has 1 career NFL reception for 10 yards that he recorded with the New York Jets against the Buffalo Bills in Week 18 of the 2021 season. So these guys are a little bit older too, right? Some of these guys are a little bit older. I mean, 2021, that puts him probably at 26, 27 years old, at least somewhere in that range. His college peak as a former top-tier recruit whose college career was really derailed by several foot injuries. Physically, his best stretch was his true freshman year at Michigan in 2017. He had 149 yards in 3 games before fracturing his foot. He later posted 240 yards for Texas in 2020. And in the UFL, he won the 2026 title alongside Lucky Jackson with the Louisville Kings, where he served as their vertical deep threat, and he hauled in 388 yards with 2 scores while averaging over 15 yards a reception. So we have 2 different types of players here. You have the X, receiver. I like Tariq Black's size, style better than I do Tay Martin, but Tay Martin to me is just too thin at 180. I don't like thin guys when they're that big. But then when you look at Lucky Jackson, he's kind of that perfect slot guy that maybe you could turn into a return specialist because he has 4.36 speed. And then you have Lawrence Keys, who might be the most polished of all of them. He just happens to be wrapped in a 5'9", 175-pound frame. Next up, we're going to do 14 takeaways. I think I have at least 14 takeaways. And what did Gibbs say about Drew Petzing. I need to rest my voice again real quick. Be right back. Just looking at some of the comments here, I would say that a lot of you kind of had this pinned exactly right. Body's coming in too to give our other guys a rest. So when you're looking at what Dan Campbell's trying to do, it's, we talked about it earlier. He's trying to move around the snap load and the workload. And so a lot of these guys coming in, it's to give some of the other guys a lot more rest at the wide receiver position. But we still have answers to get at the bottom of the final roster. All right, now I'm going to take my break. All right, here we go. I do want to bring in one sec here. I do want to bring in, since I know there's been a lot of conversation, I just noticed it in the chat with Isaiah Pacheco and Jahmyr Gibbs, and I know I've provided, I have provided in the past the information on both of these guys. So let's put this to rest real quick, because I think it's important that when we talk about these guys, that we do it from the perspective of trying to be accurate, right? That's one thing that I've always prided myself on here is truth, transparency, and honesty. I know that we have some haters. Like I was dealing with some haters this morning, like thinking like I didn't hurt my neck, like I have something to hide. Like what the hell? You know what I'm saying? And now, just to comment on that real quick, does anybody really understand the HIPAA laws? Like I've gone through depositions and had to deal with doctors, for that, because I had, some lawsuits in that when I got injured. And so I've gone through all that. I mean, it cost a boatload of money, but you can't have a doctor just jump in a live stream and say, oh yeah, that's my patient. This is what's wrong with them. Legally, they can't do any of that. It has to be done from, and actually I wrote something at like noon. I think it'll come out in that post I did from the yesterday. But it's just important that people understand facts. And that's kind of where I'm going with this whole thing with Pacheco and Gibbs too, because facts are important. And trust me, if I could have a doctor come on and talk about anything, I would. But even if I pull up my chart, people are going to still think it's AI. So I can't win either way. And so after this show, there'll be some things that'll pop up in the comments from yesterday when I posted that will show. Like I've had 6 contacts with my just one of my doctors in a couple of days. Healthy people maybe see a doctor 3 times a year, and I'm having, communication and visits 6 times in a matter of a few days. I think that tells you something, right? But I can't stand haters, man. Keyboard warriors, like I've always said, come meet me where I'm at, and I'll be glad to show you anything you want to see. But the people that want to hide behind their keyboard, that have nothing valuable to add to this world, period, like get out of your mom's basement, bro, and come meet me where I'm at. But they won't, because they're all scared and they don't know what facts are. We live in a strange world. We really do. But let's do this on Pacheco here and Gibbs. Let me get this pulled up. I believe this is Gibbs, who we have on the screen now. Yep, that's Mr. Gibbs. He runs a 4.36 40, 1.52 10-yard split, 33.5-inch vert. Here's Isaiah Pacheco. I mean, identical. 4.37 40, 1.55 split, 33-inch vert, 9.10 broad. Let's go back to Jameer. He has a half-inch vert on him. He has 0.03 in the 10-yard split, and he didn't do a broad. And he has 0.01 in the 40 on Pacheco. So when I've talked about the speed difference, now I don't know why his production score was so low. Obviously, maybe his college years, he didn't have as much production as he wanted to. But a lot of that scheme and usage and everything else, Pacheco has been, kind of pushed down the roster a little bit. But what did they say about him back then? Hard charging, high energy runner. He's still that today. 3 down size. He definitely has that. Let me make sure this is muted. Potential to compete for a roster spot is a late round selection. Pacheco plays the game like a race car with no brakes. That's still who he is today. His feet never stop moving. We've seen that. And his furious tempo creates opportunities, but also limits his ability to set up defenders. And that is true. I mean, a lot of people have kind of said, hey, he needs to be a little bit more patient. And I think he's going to learn that from Gibbs, being a little bit more patient. But I think that also takes away of who he is as that hard charger. I mean, he looks for contact. Stop looking for contact, and you'll probably stay a little bit healthier. But he possesses the front. He processes the front fairly quickly, has the agility to readjust his running lanes to create something out of nothing. But he also has the tendency to bounce runs wide too frequently. Pacheco plays the game with an NFL demeanor and could give himself an even better chance of becoming an RB2 or 3 if he can step up his pass protection and third down value. Well, the pass protection, he was better than David Montgomery. If you go back and look at his record so far through the NFL and the opportunities that he's had, what he's done with those opportunities, he's been a better pass protector than what David Montgomery has had. So I think that there's definitely, some value added there. And then the other value is the fact that he is just as fast as Gibbs. He may not be as elusive. He may not have as slippery of a hips that Jahmyr Gibbs has. And he's definitely not as patient as Jahmyr Gibbs is. But both of these guys, they're adding some juice to this team. Here's what they said about Gibbs back then, too, that he might not be the engine of an NFL running game. Well, you got that wrong. Who was this? Lance Zierlein, man. He's usually pretty spot on. But he's more than capable of adding juice to the offense. He's a slasher who can stretch defenses wide. He has the wiggle to elude tacklers in space. However, he could see his effectiveness diminish inside. Gibbs might be better off with a more measured carry count as an RB2, but his versatility and pass-catching prowess will give creative play callers an opportunity to exploit certain personnel groupings and find mismatches in space. So he got the rest of that, right, spot on. However, Gibbs will be the number one this year, the true number one. He will be the engine of this offense. And you know what? He still isn't going to have 20, 25 carries a game. I still think he's going to be in that 16, maybe 20 carries a game max at times when needed. But that's why Pacheco's there, right? That's why, our third and fourth running back are there, because they're going to give these guys an opportunity to stay rested and be ready for the rest of the season. So I think it's important that, when we talk about these guys, both of these guys are dynamic in their own way, but both of them are fast, and they just have different styles of a running game to them. But anyway, I just wanted to put that to bed real quick. I know it's been a topic, that's been popping up a lot lately. At any rate, look, we are so blessed as Lions fans. I mean, we have such a wealth of riches on this offense. It's not even funny. You can't point at another offense and say that offense is better than what the Lions have. You can't. I mean, you position for position, maybe the offensive line has some questions, but I think even some of those questions are starting to diminish, with the way that the offense is taking shape right now, and the offensive line has been doing pretty well. We've had a couple of decent days, I think, throughout the camp, but look, it's pretty hard for the bigs, and the bigs will tell you this too. It's pretty hard for them to really get good action without pads. Every other skill position, and the DBs, the linebackers, the quarterbacks, safeties, corners. Look, they can all have some fun in mini camps and OTAs. The bigs are kind of just like, why am I even here? They can get their workouts in. They can learn some timing, some rhythm, some spacing, but they really can't do anything without pads because that's their whole job, man, is contact. So anyway. Robbie, I think you're just on the losing side of this one, man. It's all good. Film is film, yeah, but I think you just got to go look at the GPS. The GPS, I think, is what matters the most. Film is film. Looks can be deceiving. Amon-Ra St. Brown is not fast, right? He's not. But on tape, on film, he's elusive. Why? Because he understands spacing. And when you understand spacing, you don't have to be the fastest guy. When you're smart and you know where to put yourself, you don't have to be the fastest guy. Sometimes you could be the fastest guy in the world and run yourself right out of the damn play because you didn't pay attention to the spacing and you didn't put yourself in a position to win. So me, like I love film, and the film is the ultimate separator. You're spot on with that. But I will never say that Pacheco's not a fast guy. He's a fast guy. He's very fast. 4.36 is crazy fast. My son runs 4.4, and I mean he's been running 4.4 since he was probably a freshman, maybe late 8th grade. He was like 4.5 as an 8th grader, then like 4.45, and then he really jumped into it. And he had hundreds of colleges coming after him just for his speed, because for baseball, if you can run, you can steal bases. They don't need you to bat. They don't need you to pitch. They don't need you to play defense. Go steal bases. And hundreds of colleges just wanted him for that, and then he tore his ACL. So that kind of shut that down. Sucks, because a lot of players come back from it, and he still has speed. But watching my son at 4.4, it's different. Watching it close up is different. You see these guys that, when I was in high school, I bet you I ran 4.6. I was not the fastest guy in the world, and nobody was really that much faster than me. There's a couple of guys, like Holbrook was really fast, Johnny G was really fast, Sarney was really fast. Those guys are probably in that 4.4 range, and it's just different. It's totally different. And 4.36 is different yet. I mean, seeing some of these guys that run in the 4.2s is insane. Like a lot of these guys that running 4.5s is plenty fast. You don't have to be that much faster. All right, let's get into the 14 takeaways that I have from camp. And there's a lot more. Like I said, I'm not going to hit them all. There's so many conversations to be had. But I want to start with Jahmyr Gibbs. Since we're talking about Jahmyr Gibbs, let's finish with Jahmyr Gibbs. He just gave Drew Petzing the biggest endorsement of any election. I don't care what it is. He just gave Drew Petzing the biggest endorsement of any offensive coordinator to date. The most important thing Gibbs said was not about himself. It was about how fast the entire offense is already playing. The installation speed, the player confidence, the explosive play design, Goff's comfort already, was apparent day one, and avoiding 2025's inconsistency. Jahmyr Gibbs wrapped all of that up into a very simple statement by saying how much further ahead the Lions are this year, the offense, compared to last year. And I think a lot of us were concerned, I know I was. I called Johnny Mo out from the very beginning. Dude, if you're not going to be in the box, that's a problem. A lot of people push back on me for that. It's a problem. It takes a huge level of communication away from everybody. And you're new. It's one thing if you're Ben Johnson and you're in your third season as an OC and you decide that you want to go up into the box for a couple of games. I don't think that you're going to have as big of an issue with that. And I don't think that there's going to be a big breakdown in communication because a lot of it is already understood. You already know what to do. You know what the communication level is. But if you're a new guy, you need to be on the damn field with the guys. And Drew Petzing, that's where he does his business. I know there's some conversation. If Drew was going to go up in the box, he said he might flirt with it in preseason or something. That dude's going to be on the field. I'm almost willing to bet anything he's going to be on the field. Kafka will probably be up in the box. And that's where he belongs, honestly, is up in the box and giving the communication down to Petzing as to what's going on with, with the passing game and the holes that are opening up for those guys. So the biggest, off-season statement, I think to date, right now, is Jahmyr Gibbs endorsing Drew Petzing, having this offense way ahead of where it was last year. And that makes me feel a ton better about where this offense is headed. And I think that it's really going to show up before week one. Jimmy Rolder. So Jimmy Rolder is actually outperformed Derek Moore, as far as draft picks. I was a little bit worried, a lot of bit worried about Derek Moore. I think like the Lions took him a bit early. There may have been some other teams that were looking for, a guy of his size and stature and the type of athlete he was. Maybe he would have been taken in the second round still. Maybe he would have, leaned into the third where the Lions didn't have a pick. But the Lions also didn't really do any trade backs, this year. So I think that they were trying to move ahead the entire, draft simply because this draft was not loaded. Derek Moore, I think, was selected a little bit ahead where he should have been. And some of this right now is Jimmy is really picking everything up a lot faster. They're not the same position. I get that. But as a fourth-round linebacker, Jimmy has really showed meaningful growth during some of these practices. His immediate route, to the active roster, I think it's going to run through the communication, having clean communication, clean tackling, and then special teams work. I think those are probably the three main things that I see for Jimmy right now that are going to matter the most to his ability to get on the field. And he does not need to really overtake, Detroit starters. Like, he doesn't need to be better than, Jack Campbell or Derek, Barnes. But I think the faster processing that he does have, the processing speed up in that brain of his, could make the difference of him being a dependable depth piece and a weekly game contributor, especially in special teams. But right now, he's picking things up a little bit faster. He's getting his hands on the football. He's keying and diagnosing well. At least that's a story, out of Allen Park so far. And I think this is a player to watch during camp. So Jimmy Rolder's doing a good job. Derek Moore has a little bit more to go. We'll talk about. I'll just jump into Derek Moore right now. His development, right? As a rookie edge defender in the NFL, it's a tough job. I think we all understand that. And he enters a very crowded room, led first and foremost by Aiden Hutchinson, and it's strengthened by DJ Wanham, who's a pro's pro, like he's been around. Peyton Turner is a pro's pro. He's been around. They've got meaningful snaps as starters in the NFL. And then you have this UDFA coming out of nowhere, Anthony Lucas, who quite honestly shouldn't have been a UDFA. But Moore brings a different size, a different type of power, more of an enforcer, but high effort guy. And in his early role, I think, is going to come through run defense. And that's where I've kind of had him the whole time. He's a much better run defender than he is a pass rusher. And he also could create some specialized pressure packages, utilizing his different set of skills that he does have. And I think that the padded practices maybe will reveal how quickly his technique is going to translate to the NFL. And I think this is the big defining factor for Derek Moore. He may not look great right now without pads on. Okay, so let's leave it there. I'm not going to say anything negative about Derek Moore until I can see the guy in pads. And even then, the negativity is just critique. It's not negative because it's born to be negative. I think every player deserves their moment. And I think that Derek Moore is going to have his moment when the pads come on. But I'm going to kind of yield back on where he's progressing right now. Hey, Rolder could fall back when the pads come on. When the real speed hits you in the face, he could withdraw a little bit. Right now, he looks great without pads on. That could flip-flop in a few weeks. So for Derek Moore, his development's been a little bit slower. Guys like Anthony Lucas that are shining right now without pads on, he could have the same problem. He could draw back a little bit. So let's not get too excited about anyone, but at the same time, I think we need to be excited about where the rookies are, where the UDFAs are, and where the rest of the team is right now. I think that they're all doing well. Same thing for Terry and Arnold. This will be point number 3, or, my minicamp takeaways, number 4, excuse me. Terry and Arnold's got to earn it. And this is not where I think a lot of us expected Terry and Arnold to be in year 3, having to kind of reassess who he is in this room. And don't read too much into this, because Terry and Arnold has all the gifts in the world to be a top tier corner in the NFL. He has unfortunately had a second season that was, encapsulated by injury. And there's nothing you can do about that. You really can't. If you look at Ennis Rakestraw, he's, another player that is having a surge, a resurgence of his career in year 3, because he's now finally healthy. But it's early, right? It's early. He's added some bulk, and we'll talk about that in a minute too. So Terry and Arnold, he entered the summer with his shoulder injury that he still said he's around 75, 85%. And he's not guaranteed a starting job, right? I mean, but that's been every year. So you can't read into what Dan Campbell says. No one is guaranteed a starting job. It's always been that way. And I don't know why people think it is any different here in 2026 than it has been. Like, Dan and Brad have always said from day one, we don't care how much money you're making. We don't care where you were drafted, when you were drafted, what school you played for. None of that. As a free agent, we could care less how much we paid you or what your previous work was. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to get an earlier shot. That doesn't mean you're not going to get looked at a little bit sooner. But what it also means is if there's someone else that's playing better than you, we're going to play him. Just go back and look at what happened to Malcolm Rodriguez in his rookie year. Now, different set of circumstances. We didn't have a damn team. So they had to put those guys in a little bit earlier. And they did. And some of them reaped the benefits of that early exposure. Now, Terry and Arnold, I know a lot of people like to jump on this dude's back for whatever reason. I know he's had a pretty rough offseason, with the whole legal crap. And I think that is going to be the one thing that could ultimately derail Terry and Arnold is, if people want, just like they play with me, right? Just the people that want to cancel you, the people that are trying to get after you and to make things bigger than what they need to be. We've all talked about it. But I've never been one to put Terry and Arnold, in a boat with no paddles to say, like, he's not innocent. I think you're always innocent until you're proven guilty. Unfortunately, in the court of public opinion, it's not that way. But if there's one thing that Terry and Arnold could, not benefit from, that could get in his way this year, is that. And that would be the mental game. It's not anything about his ability, because I think his ability on the field is tremendous. And Ennis Rakestraw is a problem for him right now, because Ennis Rakestraw is healthy. He's getting first team opportunities, and he's kind of gaining on Terry and Arnold, early in the season, while Arnold's been limited in practice. So the deeper conversation is the cornerback room is deeper. And I think that means that draft status is not going to settle their competition. They're equals right now. Availability, technique, and physical confidence is going to develop Terry and Arnold's role. And when he gets the pads on, and hopefully he can come back, in a few weeks here and not be 85 or 75 to 80%. Like, that's a lot further away than where we expected Terry and Arnold to be right now. I think that we are expecting him to be more towards that 85, 90%. And then by training camp, he's in that, 90, 95%. Pads on, let's go get it. So he has a long way to go in a very short time. But we have players on this depth chart right now. And thankfully, Brad did pick up Ennis Rakestraw, because if he does stay healthy this year, or better yet, when he stays healthy this year, then we have a very good problem. And we're already starting to see we have a very good problem. The DB room is better than where it was last year. And last year we were saying how deep it was. And it was fairly deep to be able to play the way that they did towards the end of the season. Even through the middle parts of the season when we were suffering from a lot of injuries. This room is better. It is much better. And Chuck Clark, when I talk about him in a minute, that dude is going to be on the field all year. I don't care when Kirby and Brian are both back. He's going to be on the field. So to wrap this up, Terry Arnold, he has to earn it, just like everybody else. I already talked about Dan Campbell pushing camp. He plans to maintain a very physical, demanding training camp despite Detroit's recent injury history. I think it's just part of the process, right? Every team kind of goes through this stuff. But the Lions are going to attempt to balance the intensity out, a little bit of a smarter workload management. And Dan Campbell believes that pursuit, tackling, communication, and toughness all must be developed through real football work, right? You can't do it, in a circle, playing duck, duck, goose, talking about football. You have to do it on the field. And, they're not going to be protected by, turning camp into an extended walkthrough period. That's going to limit them. So Dan's not going to hold back. When camp gets here in a few weeks, man, they're going all in. And it's no different than any year. The work's got to get done. So through the first part of this, we have Jahmyr Gibbs, Petsy endorsement, huge. Jimmy Rolder's earning some trust. Terry Arnold has to earn it. Dan Campbell's pushing camp. Fifth point is Derek Moore is beginning to develop, but he has a long way to go. And with that, we'll go into our sixth point. Detroit added some serious edge length. This is another major story coming out of OTAs and the two minicamp practices. So Detroit intentionally rebuilt the edge room this year with longer bodies, bigger defenders. And this is something that y'all know I've been talking about for a long time. It's not that we needed another edge on the other side of Aiden. We needed another edge behind Aiden, someone that could give Aiden a rest and also be better in the run game, which requires longer arms, right? And so that has been, I think, our biggest problem is the arm length and the longer bodies, the bigger bodies. And this year they did that. If you look at, El-Qadim Muhammad, the reason why he's successful, he's a longer body. If you look at just about any edge in the league, Garrett, why is he so successful? Well, he's big, but he's super long. And his arms are what, like 34 and a half inches or 34 inches, but he's got a very long, very wide body. And whenever you have a very wide and very long body that work well together, you can be in one spot and you can affect a play that's two spots over just simply because of your arm length and the ape index with a broad chest. So that is a big storyline that the big defenders, Aiden Hutchinson, who's tall, short in the arm length, but tall, Wanham, longer body, Peyton Turner's massive long body, and then Lucas, over 7-foot wingspan. And the dude is terrorizing everybody right now because of that. And then you have Derek Moore that's kind of in between, but he meets that requisite 33.5-inch arm length, and that's going to pay dividends for him. But it's giving the Lions defense more range and more physical presence to be able to control multiple gaps at the same time. And this length, it can help compress the pockets. It can distribute the throwing lanes and make, heavier fronts look more effective while they're reducing, the pressure on Aiden Hutchinson to really generate, every dangerous rush opportunity just from his position. It's now going to be able to be spread, and you're going to have more focus taken away from Aiden at times. It's going to provide for other guys, whether it's a linebacker or whether it's another edge or it's an interior defensive lineman. They're all going to, pay dividends in the end and have more opportunities simply because of the length that the Lions have added. So big ups to Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, and Calvin Shepard for pointing out one of the biggest deficiencies on this team wasn't edge depth. It was edge length, and they finally did it. And I think that is going to lead to...
That is a big-time stop by that defense.
And not only that...
Ball's loose on the ground.
And that's that. Like, that's what's going to happen. You're going to have a lot of balls on the ground, and the Lions going to get their hands on them. I think this is our 7th point, mini takeaway here for the Lions headed into training camp. The secondary is definitely more competitive. We talked about it just a second ago, but Detroit added enough experience, versatility, to make nearly every secondary role competitive. DJ Reed, Roger McCreary, Ennis Rakestraw, Terrian Arnold, Chuck Clark, Christian Izzian, all shape the rotation. And I think that, DJ Reed is turned into a different style of a leader this year. He's come in healthier. He said that he had some injections done in the off season. I would love to know where to get those. I got peptides. I'm doing peptides here soon. Can't wait because there's some really, really, really good ones. I don't know if peptides are even legal for the NFL. Like, I don't know what they can and can't do, but I'm doing some peptides that are going to help with rebuilding, my back and my neck and stuff like that. And then also oxidative stress from post-cancer. I don't know why I didn't do this earlier. Probably because it wasn't FDA cleared, but I don't care anymore. Anyway, sidestep that conversation. DJ Reed, Roger McCreary, Ennis Rakestraw, Terrion Arnold, Chuck Clark, Christian Izien. This is a major room development. I feel when we started adding these guys, y'all heard me months ago when I said we're going nickel. And we're going nickel because of two things. One, you look at the guys we brought in, but two, the guys we don't have. Without Kirby and without Branch, it's pretty tough to go into a single post man, defense that isn't able to really rotate. Late, they're not able to do a lot of things that other defenses can do. But if you go nickel and you do a two safety shell, and then bring in that fifth or sixth guy at times, six being dime, but that fifth guy being nickel, you can do a lot more from a defensive standpoint. And yes, your run defense should get better with the right guys. When you have guys that can come in as a third safety that can play a small linebacker role, more speed, better tackling ability, that run defense is going to improve. When you're able to spread the field, hit more zones, but do it with speed, you can be spread out a little bit more. But if you can cover point A to point B faster, which is what the Lions are able to do now, you can spread the field and also maintain your run fits. You've added more length to the edge room. That's going to pay dividends for the DBs. Those two work hand in hand together. You guys have seen it. It was my biggest call, I think, of 24, 23. I forget which year it was. But I had mentioned that, and I've always mentioned this. Someone was saying that, coverage sacks. Well, what are coverage sacks? Coverage sacks are garbage. No, coverage sacks is the NFL. That's what it's all about. If you can't give your defense time to work, well, then it doesn't matter who you have. I don't care if you have four guys on that defensive line that are all the highest paid, all the number one guys in the NFL. If they have 2.5 seconds of time to work, ain't none of them going to get to the quarterback. It doesn't matter. So when you are able to provide for your defensive front, they will be able to work a lot better. And the same will be said for the defensive front when they are able to push and get to the quarterback and create opportunities for the defensive backfield. That's when more turnovers are going to happen. And I think it was 24 because that's when Kirby had his big year. So it paid dividends, and it's going to pay dividends again this year. I think the larger challenge is creating the dependable communication. I think that is the biggest thing to come out of camp this year is the communication between the new combinations, the coverage exchanges, the late adjustments, don't let up the big explosive plays. To me, that is where the secondary has to grow the most. Chuck Clark, this dude, he's hit the ground running. He's earned the respect of this team. And between him and DJ Reed, I think the communication is solid. Listening to Chuck Clark the other day, I think that we all took away, at least most of us did, Chuck Clark's a pretty intelligent guy. There's a big time reason why he's in Detroit, and that's because he can take over Kirby's spot, he can take over Branch's spot in a heartbeat, but the communication as a leader in the backfield is so needed on each and every play, and he's going to be able to get these guys lined up where they need to be. He's been there, done that. And then to see guys like Christian Izien, they got pushed out of his spot and translated his game to more, special teams. Tampa screwed up. He's playing great in Detroit right now, and he's able to play that strong safety role for the Lions. He's able to play that Brian Branch role for the Lions. He's not Brian Branch, but he's able to play that role, and I think that, it's going to be a role that he's going to define for himself as time wanes on. And then Roger McCreary, able to play up in the nickel spot. He's going to have to fight, some of these other guys because Christian Izien can do it too. But, man, we've got such a good group in rotation. Rock Ya-Sin could be our second corner. Between Rock Ya-Sin, Terrion Arnold, and Ennis Rakestraw, what an amazing camp battle you have right there. And then Avonte Maddox plays the nickel and then can also drop back and play, the strong safety role. And last year played single post for the first time ever. He'll have more opportunity this year to drop in Kirby's role and hopefully expand that and become a better player this year himself. So we have such a great amount of playmakers that have versatility. I think that what you're going to see, from this development over training camp is this is going to be a tough battle. Probably the biggest battle of anything right now is the secondary. And I think the edge is going to define itself pretty quickly. And I don't think linebacker, there's much of competition in there. And defensive tackle, it is what it is right now. So I think secondary is probably the biggest camp battle we have on our hands, and it's going to be a fun one. That's one of the best ones to watch, I think. Casey Rogers. I think this is another important point that I'm taking away, into training camp. Defensive line coach Casey Rogers is really building a front that can change personnel and alignment without becoming predictable. I've spoken ad nauseum about hockey line shifts and where I think that Detroit can really pair some long edge defenders with heavier interior rotations and combinations that feature Lee McNeil or Tyleik Williams or Levi Onwuzurike. And the goal is really to create pressure, favorable matchups, and then a lot of buzz, man. You're going to have to do mismatches that, in my opinion, they can do a lot more games up front with the style of players they have. You can put players in a better position to win. You're doing more stunts, and I think that's going to lend to more opportunities for the linebackers. But doing a lot more games, performing a lot more games up front, and then shifting guys in and out and creating different looks for the offense, I think that's going to give this Lions defense a big edge going into training camp. And then what comes out of training camp, I think, is just going to be a well-oiled machine. I think Casey Rogers is having fun this year. We'll listen to Casey Rogers in a moment. Mike Kafka. Finally heard from Mike Kafka this year. I think we'll listen to Mike Kafka this morning too. But his value to this team, I think it's really helping Drew Petzing and Dan Campbell, like I said, sharpen the details to improve the timing, improve the spacing, the young player development. He's a pass game genius. And I think I wrote something on him in the spring and how I felt that he would be a great offensive coordinator for Detroit. Let me go into my Detroit Football Journal, which, by the way, I'm still giving out 90-day free trials. If I haven't upgraded yet, I will today. Yeah, here we go. Back on January 14th at 7:30 in the morning, I wrote an article about Mike Kafka and how he can unlock the Detroit Lions offense. I'm interested. What the hell did I say about this guy? I think I wrote it on January 13th. I'm peaked now. What did I say? Let's see if I got him right. Watch, I probably didn't. Let's see if I got him right. I haven't read it since I posted it, so. All right, here we go. What did I say about Mike Kafka way back when? All right, so Mike Kafka, Patrick Mahomes whisperer. Modern spread offense, exactly what we do. Red zone mastermind, exactly what we need. All right, so as the Detroit Lions turn the page on their offensive staff, they aren't just looking for a play caller. They are looking for a stabilizer who can maintain high-end production without reinventing the wheel. Enter Mike Kafka, a man who has spent the last 12 months managing the fiercest storm in the NFL. His most recent position as the interim head coach of the New York Giants did not end well, but Kafka completed a formal interview for the New York Giants head coach position in early January of 2026. But he is also interviewing for offensive coordinator roles with other teams like the Buccaneers and the Lions, suggesting he's exploring all options as the Giants search continues for a permanent hire. So Kafka's stock is a fascinating paradox. He is the quarterback whisperer who helped mold Patrick Mahomes into a legend, or is the captain of the sinking ship that we saw in New York last season. Like, which one is he, right? The reality, I think, lies in the tape, where Kafka has quietly proven himself to be one of the league's most adaptable schematic architects, a coach who sits firmly at the intersection of the Andy Reid and Brian Daboll coaching trees, and those are pretty solid trees to fall off of. What's his archetype as a pass caller, as a play caller? He's the West Coast RPO hybrid, and that's, again, you're looking at exactly what the Lions run. Kafka is a direct descendant of the Andy Reid West Coast spread. His base language is pure West Coast, which is what? Timing, spacing, horizontal stretch, exactly what the Lions do. But his dialect in modern RPO, run pass option, the Lions, yes, do run the RPO. Unlike the McVay tree, where he also spent time, but which relies heavily on play action and condensed formations to set up the deep shot. Kafka's system spreads the field to run the ball. Exactly what we do. He utilizes 11 and 10 personnel to lighten the box before hammering defenses with gap scheme runs, a philosophy that evolved significantly during his time managing New York's limited roster. What's the case for adaptability under fire? The strongest argument for Kafka is not statistical dominance, but crisis management, which I think he did well in New York. I mean, he had big crisis, right? The Giants season was derailed by injuries, most notably the loss of star receiver Malik Neighbors. Despite the losing his primary weapon and navigating quarterback carousel, Kafka kept the unit functional, and I think that is something to take away, from his time in New York too. Is that he kept that offense moving forward. The scramble drill structure with Neighbors out and the defense and the offensive line shuffling, Kafka pivoted to a heavy RPO and quick game attack to protect his quarterbacks. He proved he could manufacture easy yards for fringe roster players like guys that haven't played at all, right? Creating production out of tight ends and running backs when the wide receiver room was decimated. Proof of concept, 2022 versus 2025. We have seen what Kafka does when he has a healthy roster. In 2022, he coached Daniel Jones to his best professional season. 3,205 yards, 15 TDs, 5 interceptions, 708 rush yards. Not a stellar season by any means, but that was his best season. And a playoff win. That season, like, they came out of nowhere. I think that they made the playoffs in 8-9 or 9-18. He built an offense that protected the quarterback and minimized mistakes, which is huge. And this risk mitigation model is exactly what Detroit needs to get Jared Goff back on track. What's the argument against? Well, the Daboll shadow. The primary knock on Kafka is the difficulty in separating his philosophy from Brian Daboll's. For the first 2 years in New York, the offense was viewed as Daboll's brainchild, with Kafka merely pushing the buttons. So consider that for a moment. If Kafka really wasn't in charge as an offensive coordinator, and Daboll's, kind of forcing him to do what he wants him to do, well, then I think that you kind of have to throw those couple of years out in New York and not blame Kafka for what went down there. But when Kafka finally took full control as interim head coach late in 25, this is where the offense became noticeably conservative, relying on heavy 12 and 13 personnel to protect a crumbling offensive line. Critics wondered if he possessed the aggression required to keep pace in the NFC North, or if he is naturally risk averse, right? So if he were to end up in the NFC North in Detroit, can he do what's necessary, to be more aggressive, or, is he naturally just risk averse and plays things too safe? What are the risks? The survival mode habit. In an effort to protect the battered roster last season, Kafka's play calling became incredibly conservative. Run, pass. It's kind of an example there, or pass, run, whatever. The risk is that the defensive mindset has become a crutch. Can he flip the switch back to aggressive when he has weapons like Jameson Williams, or will he play timidly? What is the Reid trap? Well, many assistants leave Andy Reid and fail because they try to replicate the complexity of the Chiefs' offense without Patrick Mahomes. Kafka must prove that he can simply simplify the cheeseburger playbook for a rhythm passer like Jared Goff. What are their strengths as a coordinator? The Kelsey blueprint, right? Sam Laporta usage here. When I went deep on Kafka, I saw a lot of opportunity of what he was doing when he was in Kansas City, and especially with how Kelsey evolved, and then thinking, man, Sam Laporta is going to be blessed with a guy like this. But Kafka spent 5 years in a room watching Travis Kelsey dismantle zones. He understands the Y ISO concepts better than almost anyone. In Detroit, he would immediately turn to Sam Laporta into the primary intermediate weapon, utilizing him not just as a safety valve, but as the engine of the offense against cover 2 and cover 3. And that's what we lost last year when Sam Laporta was out. At cover 2 and cover 3 on third down, we didn't have our chain mover in there, but now he's back, and we have another guy or two that could potentially help us in that room. Red zone creativity was up next. The hallmark of Reed's tree is goal line geometry. Kafka excels at using the orbit and the jet motion, which the Lions do use. Matter of fact, we use orbit quite a bit. I think that Johnny Moe kind of killed that for us last year. But anyway, in the low red zone, they utilize both of these to confuse linebackers, right? You want to get these guys moving around when you're doing the orbit and the jet motion. It fits perfectly with Jahmyr Gibbs' skill set, creating leverage on the perimeter for easy walk-in touchdowns. How many times have we seen him do that? If you send Amon-Ra St. Brown into an orbit motion, next thing you know, you've got Jahmyr Gibbs walking free, into the corner of the end zone. We've seen it many times. Then you have the RPO layering. Kafka's run game is rarely just run. It is almost always tagged with a backside slant or a bubble screen. I hate the bubble screen. But this forces defenders to play slow, something that would allow Detroit's elite offensive line to dominate at the second level. Well, we need that offensive line to be elite again this year for that to happen. Why does he fit? I think Kafka fits Detroit because he offers schematic continuity with a Reed twist. I think the golf protection plan is viable. You have Kafka's 2025 season in New York was a masterclass in masking a bad offensive line. And the Lions had a bad offensive line last year. We don't know who we were going to be this year. That's why he fits. So giving him the Lions elite unit, which was an elite unit, should be an elite unit this year, is giving a Formula One driver a Ferrari after driving a go-kart. I mean, if you're not laughing right now, I was laughing when I was writing this because it's just like what happened with Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson never, coached an offense the way that he did in Detroit, and all of a sudden he's handed the keys to a Ferrari. Like, that's a bit different between him and Petzing. Petzing was never given that opportunity, and now Petzing isn't just driving a Ferrari. He's driving a Ferrari to work, and then he's jumping in, he's jumping in, the hottest, fastest race car you can get your hands on in Detroit right now with this offense. So it's assuming that the Lions can get back to their elite offensive line days, like I said, between 21 and 24. He prefers the quick game concepts, dragon, line, slant, flat, that Goff does excel at. The Gibbs unleashing. Look, in Kansas City, the backs were often used as receivers first. Kafka's scheme excels at getting the running back into space against linebackers, exactly what we want. He would likely view Jahmyr Gibbs not just as a runner, but as the Tyreek Hill of the backfield. And I think all of us can agree that type of speed, the ability to provide a mismatch piece to be moved all over that formation is what we're going to see this season. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is just going to completely break the NFL. It's going to be a murderous scene. I think when these defenses that we're going to leave in the wake of Jahmyr Gibbs this year. Ideal landing spots, I had him number one going to the Detroit Lions. I think that the roster is ready-made for his West Coast spread system. I think the Lions need to find that sweet spot between the bunch and spread systems to layer in the run concepts to take advantage of the weaponry on this roster. The verdict is the high floor pivot for me. I thought that Mike Kafka isn't, the trendy hire that creates viral clips on Twitter and X, but he is arguably the most prepared. He has seen the mountaintop with Mahomes and the valleys with the 2025 Giants. That spectrum of experience makes him uniquely qualified to handle the pressure of a perceived Super Bowl window in Detroit. And I say perceived because I don't believe in windows. He offers the structure that Jared Goff needs, the creativity that Jahmyr Gibbs deserves, and the Reed pedigree that keeps defenses awake at night. My choice, Kafka's not my first choice. To many names available right now to settle on one after Blau was retained in Washington. I do believe Kafka could bring a system that works well inside Detroit. Inside this Detroit Lions offensive roster. He will have to earn the respect of his team like anyone else, given his Super Bowl championship in 2019 with the Chiefs and his best work with some of the league's best players the last decade. It's a good start. And then there was some video analysis of his demeanor that I brought in here. But yeah, I think I hit the nail on the head with Kafka. I'm glad he's in Detroit. I think it was a perfect opportunity for the Lions, to bring in someone that is going to pay dividends. Again, I know I use that terminology a lot, but this is a guy that is going to blend very well with Petzing. And they do a lot of the things very similarly, but they also do some things different. And that's that kind of a relationship that I think is going to take this offense to the next level. The offense of last year, like we're done with that. Like we're not going to see that again. It's going to be some of the same, but it's going to be a lot different. So this was Mike Kafka sharpens the details for the Detroit Lions. Again, his work should focus on route precision, red zone execution, and then giving Jared Goff faster answers against pressure. And I think that's what you're going to see. Super excited about Mike Kafka. Next up, Isaac Tesla. He could expand this year in this offense, and I think he will. Detroit's established weapons have already created matchup problems for the last few seasons. We're talking about Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Jameson Williams. But now enters Isaac Tesla in his second season, and I think that he could make the offense more difficult to defend. Dan Campbell said that the second-year receiver already feels like a veteran, looks like a veteran, plays like a veteran. So if Tesla wins consistently on the outside, which he's kind of done, I mean, early in his career, defenses will have fewer resources available to concentrate now on St. Brown and Jameson Williams and Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta. You got 4 guys on the field that all command attention. If you have a 5th on the field in certain times, if you're an 11 personnel, you have the 3-by-1 there. You'll have 3 wide receivers and the 1 running back and the 1 tight end. So if you're running that, you're going to have to pay attention to everybody. And I think that this is where Tesla can really spread the field quickly because he can do exactly what Jameson Williams is doing. Now, he's not to the exact speed of JMO, but he does run a 4.4. And JMO's, in that upper 4.3s, like 4.30, 4.31. I know it's been talked about he's been in the 4.2s, but that's never been quantified, I guess. It's never been proven that he's running the 4.2s. He said that he did, but, since entering, or since after his injury, it's never been clocked again. The only thing that we have to go on is his GPS. And his GPS at times has been, outstanding. But where is he in his route when that GPS is clicking? Jahmyr Gibbs has had 3 of the top GPS times in the NFL. I don't think J-Mo's had 1. I don't think he's had any last year. But Jahmyr Gibbs has 3, and that tells you something. And they do look different. You have a long strider versus a short strider, and then you have Isaac Tesla, who's kind of in the middle. He's a long strider that also has short burst, and he's running, that 4.4 with amazing stretchability, body control that I have not seen in a player since the likes of Mike Evans. Like when I look at, I know that's a huge statement. I know you can crush me later, but I haven't seen body control like this early from a player since Mike Evans stepped into the league. I know it's wild, but could he develop? He could. Isaac Tesla has all the ability in the world, and if this body control stays the way that it is, and if he's able to really progress this year inside the offense, dude's going to get a bag in a couple years. Like, that's where it's lining up. He's going to get a bag. I think he's going to have a good year. And I don't think he's ever really going to break out because of the type of players we already have on the offense, which kind of sucks because he's going to be relegated to a tertiary role. He's never going to have a primary role and unfortunately, or a secondary role even. And unfortunately, that's why I use the word tertiary, because he's kind of third in line. That's a guy that you're expected to get, 5, 6, maybe 700 yards, but his red zone precision and the ability in the red zone could lead to 10 touchdowns. He doesn't need, 90 catches and 900 yards and, to get 10 touchdowns. He needs like 50 and 500 to get 10 touchdowns. And I think that's all that matters. Scoring is more important than stats. If you can score on more plays and do it in less plays, you're benefiting your offense. You're keeping your offense off the field. But then there's times where you want your offense on the field and to really stretch the clock. And so I think that's where I want to see the Lions get better at this year. I don't want to see us enter a game where it's just ground and pound, and there's not a whole lot of scoring in the beginning, unless their goal is to then later open it up to air raid. I think that puts you into a unique bottle, and it's not a good bottle. I want to see the Lions go in, foot to the floor, go score 4 or 5 times in the first half early, right? Just go and score, then ground and pound it the rest of the game. right? Then you milk the clock. But if you don't put the points up first, you may not get those points later. I hope that makes sense. Next point. Robbie, I appreciate your JMO love, but I got to say this. Like high school, nobody cares. It's high school, bro. 6 years ago. 7 years ago. It's high school. And 100 meter, it's exactly my point. I care about the 40. Even though I don't really care about the 40 for anybody because it's straight line speed, and the only ones that really run straight line speed are receivers at times. The 40 only matters. The 20 really matters, I think, most for receivers. And JMO is a long guy, long stride guy. He's not a short stride guy. He's not a short burst guy. That's why when you see him on some routes where he's curling a little bit too deep, he doesn't break down and stay snug and tight into his turns. He's staying too wide, and that's where Jared Goff can miss him sometimes. If you look at Amon-Ra St. Brown, I mean, it's super tight. Like that left foot, when you go to break down and do that comeback route, your left foot really shouldn't be touching more than once if you're making a left-hand turn. Right? If you're making a right-hand turn, it's your right foot. Someone just did that, too, the other day. It was Justin Jefferson. He did a breakdown of the same thing, talking about doing a comeback route and working towards the football. And that's where JMO needs his most work, in my opinion, is breaking down on the route, snapping off those routes, and not leaning too heavy at the top. So the speed when he gets long, if he's running, a straight route and Jared Goff hits him in stride, that long speed, he's gone. You're not going to catch him. And that's the difference with a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs. And we're just having a conversation here, but that's the difference like with Jahmyr Gibbs is where he can go from 0 to 100 in 3 steps. JMO can go 0 to 100 in like 6 steps. It takes him a little bit longer. But when they both get to that 40-yard line, if they're running a 100-meter dash, when they get to that 40-yard line, that is where JMO is going to start to gain. Because it's just math, man, and it's your body chemistry, and I don't know, I'm losing the word for it. Long strides take longer. Longer legs take longer, and he's high-hipped. Jahmyr Gibbs is short-hipped, right? He's tucked behind the hips. That's why he's so fast in the short routes, if I'm making sense. So I get it. He also didn't have an Achilles injury back in high school, and Achilles typically knocks off a 10th for most players. And so if he was running a 4.2, he's definitely in the 4.3s now. And if he was in the 4.3s, he could be in the 4.4s. But that's why I'm saying, like, it's so fast at 4.4, you don't really notice a lot between 4.3 and 4.4. You will notice a lot at 4.2. And that's even different. But it really depends, how fast you can get there. And very few guys have been able to do it. God, who was the one that did it a couple years ago when we were at the Combine? Who ran the 4.21 at the Combine a couple years ago? Oh, my God, what was his name? That was different. When we watched him do that, like, I was... My jaw hit the floor. Because that, you could see the difference. God, what was his name? Worthy. Xavier Worthy. He ran the 4.21 40-yard dash, and that was, I think, 2024. He also has a 24.41 mile per hour GPS during that record-breaking run. Let me just look at something real quick. Okay, here you go. 20 plus mile per hour speed tracking records. Jahmyr Gibbs regularly hits 20 plus miles per hour. with his top recorded ball carrier speed topping out at 22.34 miles per hour on a long touchdown run. And I think that was that 69-yard run maybe last year. Jameson Williams, who's also known for his elite top speed, different. Williams has recorded multiple instances of 20-plus miles per hour, peaking at 21.38 miles per hour during his explosive 24 and 2025 long carries or long receptions, So it says that Jameson Williams is generally believed by players and fans to have a higher absolute long speed ceiling in a 100-yard dash, where Gibbs boasts a quicker short speed burst acceleration, which often translates to a higher registered top speed in actual game situations. I didn't write this. I just asked AI, how many GPS records does Jahmyr Gibbs have versus Jameson Williams since 2023 in the NFL? And this is what it spit out. So I didn't say it, but this is what it's telling you. So I'm going to rely on, and it's exactly what I've been saying, and it's exactly what a lot of the other fans have been saying. Like, I don't know why we're so worried about it. It is what it is, but just read it. It's there. It's right there. And it just described everything that I said. So I didn't even ask it to talk about the 100-yard dash. I didn't ask it to talk about the top speed. I didn't even ask it to talk about longer legs. It just said it naturally. Now it asked me if I want to compare. What does it say? Would you like me to compare their career total yards and touchdowns since 23, their 40-yard dash and college testing profiles, the specific next-gen top speeds they recorded against specific opponents? Here, let's see what this one says. Oh. Come on. This one. No. See what this one says. Oh, come on, man. It's taking forever. And J-Mo's definitely not faster than Worry Bro. I don't even know why you say stuff like that. There's nobody on this earth that believes that. But anyway, this thing's taking forever, so we're going to skip this. I'm going to get back into the rest of these points, which we're almost done with. Got a few left. All right, so far, we've talked about Isaac Tesla. These are the 14-ish points that we're taking into training camp. Isaac Tesla expanding the offense. Mike Kafka sharpening the details on the receiver room. Casey Rogers and the versatility. A secondary is way more competitive. Detroit's added, some serious edge length to the edge room. Derek Moore has, a little bit more in his development, actually a lot more. He's developing a little bit slower. Dan Campbell's going to push camp. Terrion Arnold needs to earn it. Jimmy Rolder, he's definitely developing a lot faster, earning some trust. And then Jahmyr Gibbs giving Petsy the biggest endorsement, so far of the season with how quickly and how far ahead the offense is. That's about 10 points already. Now let's get into the right tackle position. Do you guys believe that the right tackle position right now is wide open? Like, is this a real story, that's happening right now in Detroit? That is this gonna last through camp? That it could be this wide open? I don't know. Larry Borom right now is providing that starting experience and a dependable veteran floor, while Blake Miller, the first round pick, is offering greater long-term upside, I guess is the best way I could put it. And Detroit does not need to really, force Blake Miller into the lineup immediately. And this is exactly what I was saying, right around the draft time, that I felt like this is a good situation. And I said the Larry Borom was going to start right away. at least in camp, and that's kind of what's happened. And I felt that was a big possibility because I see that Dan and Brad just do things differently. Like, they're not going to force these guys, to go out there and try to just win on day one. It's never made sense. The same way with a quarterback. Like, drafting a quarterback, I feel like you should never really force a quarterback onto the field in their first year. Yeah, if you're the first or the second overall and there's really not a great quarterback in front of you and you didn't bring in another quarterback, like, the whole, what's his name in LA. Brain is fried today. Kurt, whatever. You know what I'm saying? If you don't have a good leader in front of you, it's pretty tough to not force your quarterback out there early. But for a first round offensive tackle coming into an offense like this, you have to get it right. And so I think that what I saw happening for Blake Miller in the very beginning was, until pads come on, and even when pads come on, Larry Borom is going to give him a run for his money. And you're making a big transition. Even though Blake Miller has 54 career starts, Iron Man, all in a row, one of the most consistent tackles in the game, coming out of college, I still felt like this was going to be a tough camp battle. And I know a lot of people didn't think much of Larry Borom, but you want both of these guys ready. Because if something happens to either one, or if something happens to the other side, you definitely need to have both of these guys ready. So this fits that Detroit does not need to force Miller into the lineup, very early. Borom, must make the rookie earn the job. And it is not going to feel great for Larry Borom when Blake Miller pulls that job away from him, but he's going to. I'm expecting him to. Miller just has to prove that, the offensive line can get younger without weakening the right side of the offensive line, because that's been, handled by Penei Sewell for the last 5 seasons. And this is going to be a different look for Jared Goff. He no longer has the protection of Penei Sewell in front of him on the right side, which is much better to have a rookie on that side or Larry Borom on that side than it is, to have an even worse situation. You don't want that on the left side, right? You don't want either of those guys on the left side, because the left side is where Jared Goff's going to take the most punishment. So right tackle position, wide open right now. It's a great camp battle. And then heading into midsummer here, when these guys really get rolling with the pads on, I think that this is where Blake Miller's going to put his stake in the ground, and he's going to start to take this position from Larry Borom. But it's going to be a phenomenal camp battle until we get there. Left guard, same thing. Left guard's kind of wide open. It's a bit crowded of a room. Christian Mahogany, he's finished the spring with the early lead, but Ben Barch's absence and expected return should intensify this competition, later in July. So Miles Frazier, Juice Scruggs, even Giovanni Manu right now provide additional options and rotation ability behind Christian Mahogany. And then, of course, Tate Ratledge, out of all those guys battling for the left side, someone's going to end up being the backup over on the right side. And so Detroit really needs a guard who can protect Goff's interior platform. As you may or may not know, that is the quickest path to the quarterback, is through the A and the B gaps. So being able to communicate clearly and effectively and preserve the power identity of the run game is where this positional battle lies, here early throughout the 2026 practices. And so where does it end up ultimately? Well, we've spoken about this before too. I have mentioned many times that I felt Giovanni Manu just wasn't going to be ready to take a left tackle spot, and definitely wasn't going to start at left tackle. I felt moving him to right tackle would have been a much better opportunity, and even to a lesser extent, but I still felt that moving him inside to guard was going to be an option, and the Lions have done that. Giovanni Manu as a guard could be like one of the biggest weapons in the game if he can transition and handle it. It's all mental for him right now. He's been through the ringer, and I know a lot of people still feel like this was a waste of a draft pick. It was not. It was never a waste of a draft pick. Why? Because even if you didn't draft Giovanni Manu, who else were you going to draft? And would that player even be playing right now? The likelihood of that in the situation of the Lions roster would say no. There was nobody else that you would have really drafted. And in any other position probably would have been in the same position because the Lions roster at that time was much different. The roster needs were much different. And even though we draft the best player available, they still have to manage the roster. This year, gloves are off. Lions don't care about position. They're bringing in as many players as they can to battle wherever they can. And there's probably 3-4 major storylines going into July that are going to be some pretty solid battles. This being one of them. I think that the left guard spot is going to be a competition that lasts kind of throughout the summer. I think that I know for a fact the defensive back room is going to be a vicious battle all summer. And then you're going to have that third and fourth running back position that's going to be a big battle all summer. And then that fourth and fifth and sixth and possibly even seventh. Well, let me say that again. We'll put it out there. We'll put fourth in there. Greg Dortch is going to have to earn it too. But that fourth, fifth, sixth, and even seventh wide receiver position, their battle is going to be pretty big. But outside of that, I don't think that there's a huge competition, for the third linebacker spot. I think for right now, when you look at Malcolm Rodriguez, he's probably plugged in as the starter, and he's going to have to battle Rolder, but I think his experience is going to win over right now. So you have 3-4 really good positional battles. I don't think there's much of a battle in the tight end room. The only worry there is Sam Laporte is back. And I think that the Lions should have done something there with the tight end position. They should have brought somebody else in, and they still might. They still might. We'll see where that goes. Maybe there's a tight end that came out of the UFL that could be a good candidate to join this roster in July. So left guard, man. Detroit needs a guard that can protect Goff's interior platform, communicate, and keep the power identity of this run game flowing forward. Special teams, man, what a day did special teams have the other day. Not just from, punt return, kick return, but the defensive side of the football. And then Jack and Jake. I mean, both these guys and several coverage and return candidates, too, all stood out during minicamp. Cedric Wilson, Keith Abney, they flashed as gunners. Remember me talking about Keith Abney being a potential gunner? They've put him in at gunner. Greg Dortch, Tom Kennedy, Isaiah Pacheco, and even Amon-Ra St. Brown all handled return work fluidly. Every single one of them has done well. Isaiah Pacheco, I could see him being a primary returner, especially with that speed that he has, but also the vision and the way that he runs so damn hard. Could be a very interesting option and opportunity for Pacheco this year. I would love to see him back there a little bit more. But for players near the roster bubble, I think special teams reliability may really it always determines the final roster cuts for not every team in the NFL, but definitely for Detroit. Detroit really values special teams and being able to play through all three phases and the 4 phases in special teams. Like it's critical for them. They know that you can't just win the game with offense and defense alone. You have to be able to create. You have to be able to get the ball on defense, and you have to be able to do something with your special teams. And for Jack, I mean, he was just pinning balls all day inside the 10-yard line. Jake Bates knocking down, I think, a 63 and a 64-yarder in late game situations. So that takes a lot of stress, off of Dan and Dave Phipp. And Dave Phipp has done such an excellent job with special teams that this is where I think that we could relax a little bit is with special teams. We have so many players that can play this position, on special teams, play multiple positions on special teams. I think it's going to be one of the next bigger camp battles is who's going to win special teams. It's not something you think about, right? Like, who cares is what a lot of people think. Who cares about special teams? Not in Detroit, man. In Detroit, we care about special teams because we know that the work that can get done here can lead to those late game situations where you need a victory somewhere. You need someone to make a play, and we have several guys that can make a play. Last but not least, man, the big man, Penei Sewell. Can't say enough about this dude. You really can't. And I'm never going to do him justice. But Penei Sewell is now the stabilizing force of this offensive line all by himself. He is the last of a dying breed. He is the last holdover from the 2020 regime. Think about that. 6 seasons it took to clean out that entire offensive line room. And he got one left. And that was the first player drafted by Dan and Brad in 2021. And he's now the last remaining piece of the offensive line. That's pretty impressive. And 6 seasons now. To think this is the 6th season for Penei Sewell. No Taylor Decker, no Frank Ragnow, no Jonah Jackson. Dan Skipper's a coach. I'm missing a lot more. I'm missing a ton more. Anyway, you get the point. The offensive line has changed considerably. And in this, after undergoing major injury issues from year to year to year, his leadership now extends beyond his own assignments. Listening to what Penei Sewell was doing during practice, I just sat back and just like, man, this guy's got it. Like, he really understands that he has to remain engaged with the reserve units and these younger offensive linemen throughout practice. He gets it. And so Detroit really needs Penei Sewell to be prepared to be able to communicate, not just the communication of the offensive line, but also the physical urgency to really spread across the front while it's rebuilding its chemistry and building the chemistry around all of the new combinations that you're going to have of this offensive line. Penei Sewell, walking up and down the sideline when he wasn't in the game, when he wasn't in practice, and he's just intently watching everybody on the offensive line and making sure that they're all doing their job. And then after the play, coaching these guys up, right? Getting in there in the action, saying, hey, now I know what you need to do. I know what you need to work on. And that's what we're going to go work on together when we get into their individual rooms and they're doing their individual practices with their positional groups. Penei Sewell, he's taking notes, right? He's got his naughty and his nice list put together. And this was an exceptional moment, I think, in the growth of this team, the growth of a leader. Penei Sewell is really stepping into a major transformation this year, and I think it's going to pay dividends. To wrap all the way back around to one of the first things I said during today's show. Dividends will be paid this year, and it starts with the leaders. And Penei Sewell is one of the leaders that is most needed this season. Amon-Ra is going to do his job. We know that, right? DJ Reed, he's coming out of his shell. He's doing his job. Aiden Hutchinson, he will do his job, right? He's been around long enough. He needs to step up this year too. Aiden needs to be recognized, I think, a little bit more. And I'm not saying like they need to, talk about him more. No, he needs to make himself identified more by doing things like Penei Sewell is doing, by doing things that DJ Reed is doing. Like, when is Aiden going to have all the edge guys over to his house for, a film breakdown? I think every positional group leader needs to do that. Jared Goff does it every week, right? He's always doing something. And he's doing something for the entire team. But this is where I need to see Aiden take a step forward too. And he needs to step up big time. Running back room's kind of different. Amon-Ra's always been a leader, and here's how Amon-Ra did it this week. Before practice on Wednesday, I think it was Wednesday, before practice even started, right? He's out on the field with a jugs machine. He was the first player out there for 15, 20 minutes before anyone else stepped on the field. And he's already catching 100 balls before practice starts. That's Amon-Ra St. Brown. That is leadership at its finest. And how does that filter down to the guys beyond him? Well, Isaac Tislau last year, one of the first things that he did when he jumped into practice was immediately go and work with Amon-Ra St. Brown after every practice when Amon-Ra catches his 202. It's leadership. But, Isaac Teslau, being a Lions fan, he knew this. He heard this. He wanted to be a part of this. And so it immediately filtered down to him to follow in those footsteps. When is it going to happen now in training camp? That if Amon-Ra St. Brown is out there at 6 a.m. before anyone else steps on the field, are the rest of the guys going to be there? That is championship mentality, y'all. That is where this team is headed. And so out of these 14, 15, 20, there's so many different points to take away that transition into the summer camp and where this team is headed. We are in the best position that I think that we've been in a long time. And I haven't listened or read anyone else in weeks. I don't know what they're saying, but if they're not talking good, then I don't know what they're seeing. I don't know what I don't get it, right? I just don't get it. So that wraps up my final point of where this team is headed here in 2026. So I would like to know from y'all in the comments after, in the chat now, where do you think we are? Where do you think the Lions are in comparative to the years previous? 2023 is probably the year that nobody expected that we were going to do anything. And I think that when we talk about windows, there's two definite years that you could say windows don't really exist. I'm sorry. I disagree with it. And the reason why is this. Headed into 2023, the Lions were 9-8. We came off a 3-13-1. We go 9-8, and then we go 12-5 and go all the way to the NFC Championship game. But why did we go to the NFC Championship game? Because of 4 players that we drafted. Right? Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, Sam Laporta, Brian Branch. It was those 4 players that really set this roster to a different level that year. And all 4 of those players played the entire season for the most part. I think there's only a couple of games that were missed by all of them. And those were the 4 guys that really took us over the top. But there was no window. There was no one talking about the Lions winning a Super Bowl in 2023. And we were 17 minutes away from going to a Super Bowl. And then there's last year. The Seattle Seahawks. I know I'm one of the only guys that has been a Sam Darnold, I don't want to say Sam Darnold lover, but I've been a big supporter of Sam Darnold. And I felt when he stepped into Minnesota that he was going to have a phenomenal season. It's on record before the season where I talked about him and I said, if you don't believe in Sam Darnold, he's now in a great position to win. And it happened. Unfortunately, we had to kick his ass in week 18. But hey, the next year, I said it again, this guy's in a great position to win. He's got a good roster. But Seattle was never talked about. There was no window, right? There was no window for the Seattle Seahawks. They weren't going anywhere. But what did they do? They go win a Super Bowl. Why? Because windows don't freaking matter. You just have the right combination of things that have to happen in the NFL. Every single one of these teams could win a Super Bowl this year. I'll say it again. Every single one of these teams can win a Super Bowl this year. Why? There is not a big disparity between the rosters. There really isn't. Now, I have put it out there many times that the Lions may have the best offense. On paper, they have the best offense in the league, right? But they still have to show up and play. And whoever you're playing against can't really show up and play if you're going to have a good year. And so all of that is relative. If you just happen to have a chance week where you're going up against one of the best opponents in the league and they just happen to be really banged up, that kind of gives you an edge that week, right? And anything can go your way. The ball's going to bounce like it always bounces, and it may bounce away from you that game. Hey, you might bury that thing on the 2-yard line with your punter, and it just rolls into the end zone. And the next week, you might bury that thing on the 2-yard line. It's going to sit there and spin and fall over. And you're at the 2-yard line, right? You back the other offense all the way up. Or, hey, on the other side, it may come to the 2-yard line, and your idiot of a receiver, our return man, decides to take that ball, and next thing you know, it's 98 yards the other way. The ball bounces. And so any team can win on any given day. It's been that way forever. So I don't believe in windows, and I do believe that, the Lions this season have a unique situation ahead of them. They have one of the best coaching rooms. I think when you look at any of the coaching rooms around the league, I think that they are far and away. The people that are talking all the smack about Calvin Shepard, I really don't understand it. I think that he was asked to do something last year, just like Johnny Moe was asked to do something last year, and that was kind of keep the same thing. Calvin Shepard was kind of asked to be Aaron Glenn and, hey, change it up a little bit, but let's not get too far away from, where we've been. And he did that. And then obviously Dan probably listened to Calvin Shepard over the winter, and he said, we need to go in a different direction, partly because we don't have Branch and Kirby, but we need to go into the direction of the rest of the league. The rest of the league has been moving towards nickel. And the reason why is because the NFL rules are changing, and it's allowing defenses to do more things, not do more things across the middle like they used to. Offenses will sit there and pepper the middle all day long. And if you're stacking the middle, now you're pulling away from the run game out on the wings. So I think that Dan listened, and they realized we've got to do something different, and teams are winning with more nickel, and you're going to see more nickel. We're not going to go away from our identity, right? The Lions are going to stuff the run, and they're going to get better against the pass, and that comes with better players. But again, the window's open for every team. Every week will decide on whether that window remains open, and that really boils down to how many games you can steal, how many times that ball just bounces your way, and how many times you take that opportunity and run with it. Because there's times that teams will squander an opportunity. You're going up against a team that you should just totally beat. And how many times do they fall flat on their face? The Lions have done it. So that's where I'm at. I think that we have a phenomenal summer in front of us. And the most important thing is health. If we're not healthy, we're not going to win games. And we may win games, but we may not be able to capitalize late in the season, and you may not be able to capitalize in the playoffs. Just because you beat teams in the regular season doesn't mean that you can handle teams in the playoffs where you're playing the best of the best. If you don't have a decent roster in the playoffs, you're not going to win. I mean, when's the last time a shitty team has gone to really win a Super Bowl? It doesn't happen. It's the teams that are the most healthy from, post-draft till Super Bowl. It's the teams that are most healthy are going to win. And that's because every roster is pretty much just as good as the next. You just have a few stars in this one and not as many on that one. But even given that, look how many stars the Lions have taken away. I mean, Myles Garrett didn't get a sack on us last year, and he broke the damn record. What does that tell you? If we can take those stars away, other teams can take our stars away and force them to have an incomplete game. It happens all the time. J-Mo's had incomplete games. Amon-Ra's had incomplete games. Jahmyr Gibbs has had incomplete games. That's where that fourth and fifth guy on that offense has to step up. We have those now, right? We had some last year. Tim Patrick was that guy in 23 or 24, excuse me. We're in a good position. All right. Unknown Lion fan says, if we lose to the Jets or the Saints, I'm going to go insane. Dude, those are going to be two of the toughest games out the box, man. Like the Jets and their defense, crazy. And the Saints, look, they're one of those teams that really started to play well last year. Yeah, there you go, One Major. By the way, One Major, your coffee's in the mail, buddy. Everybody got shit but Eric because he wants tea. I don't carry tea, but I sent him a really cool box over winter. Really cool box. We'll get him some tea today. Yeah, but you're actually right, dude. Like, I mean, the Bears go to the playoffs and they have a quarterback that wins or has a 52 or 53, completion percentage. Let me talk about that dude for a moment, because there was who was talking about it. I totally forgot. I told you I was going to download and get that audio ready. Hold on here. As you can see, I'm only surviving today because I'm on a lot of steroids, man. Like, I'm going to gain a lot of weight over the next week. Face is going to blow up. I'm already flush, man. I'm all red. Hate steroids. They don't agree with me. Where is it? I put some audio down. And I missed like 6 calls. I hope one of them wasn't my guy. I hope I didn't just miss something. Actually, I better look real quick. Oh, I got voicemails too. Shit. Hold on. All right. Yep. I gotta go, y'all. I'm gonna miss an appointment. Okay. I'll get back to this later. I know we're gonna have more conversations. I got a busy day today. Doubtful that we'll get on tonight. That's why I wanted to get in this morning to put all this to bed. But I gotta go get some imaging in my back real quick, and they just had an opening, so I gotta fly. You guys have a good rest of your weekend. Can't wait to see my kids today and spend some time for Father's. I'm not gonna get them for Father's Day, but I'm glad they flew up to see me at least for a little bit, and hopefully get on over the weekend. I've been writing a little bit more on at least 2 a day. I missed a day yesterday, but I got 1 out. Trying to get 2 a day on DetroitFootballJournal.com. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. If you're not subscribed to this channel, you like a lot of what you heard today, give us a chance, subscribe, check it out, stay with us for the year, and I promise you, it's only going to get bigger. It's only going to get better. I'm doing the best job I can right now managing, all the BS that I got to manage right now, but I'm trying to put some positive change into some things that we're doing here, and that's going to come by the way of graphics, segments, everything. Going to do a lot of things differently this year, and it might be a little bit limited because I'm doing some other things behind the scenes and other platforms and some other things that I'm trying to grow. But I still want to put a good emphasis into making this a very powerful, impactful channel that can bring you all of your Lions news, and that's the focus, is to bring all of it to you and deliver it in a way that is kind of drilled down and getting you all the information. And then we got to get back to just the fan night. Like, I missed the fan night. So we have to get back to where it's all phone calls and you guys are calling in and you guys are leading the show. Like, I don't want to prepare nothing. I might have a couple of topics that we'll talk about to kind of kick us off, and then it's all on you to bring the topics. So mailbag, start hitting it. Start dropping it in there. I've got it programmed now where I'm getting the messages. I wasn't getting them before. Something happened. And then check your subscription. I've had a lot of people tell me that they've been unsubscribed without unsubscribing. So check your subscription and make sure that you're subscribed and notifications are toggled on. You're not going to get a bunch of spam or anything like that. And then check the posts. I know I got one dropping in here in a minute, but me just being a jerk off, I should probably cancel it. Because I really don't care about the haters, but they got me at like 6:30 this morning. I was just pissed off. But anyway, I got to run. So y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll hopefully catch y'all, maybe late tonight, doubtful, but probably tomorrow morning. And that's the goal is to try to get at least somewhat of a Saturday show rolling again. But all right, we'll see you guys. Take care. Go and probably go Detroit Lions. Adios.
Pressured by Hutchinson. He goes down again.